Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. We take stacks of research, regulatory documents, all that complex stuff, and distill it down into what you really need to know.
Today, we're focusing on something that's, it's highly specialized, but absolutely critical for anyone managing property in British Columbia. We're talking about mandatory deck inspections.
Right, but not for your average backyard deck. We're going deep on commercial and multifamily property, so strata buildings, specifically here in Vancouver. And our mission for this deep dive is to really get why a professional inspection isn't just another box to tick. It is the foundational, most important first step before you even think about starting any repair or replacement.
You really can't move forward without it. And the urgency comes down to two things: the climate and the complexity.
The Vancouver rain, I assume.
Exactly. In our wet, rapid weather cycles, decks on these big buildings are under enormous stress. A minor issue on a high-traffic deck can become, a catastrophic safety hazard in just a matter of weeks.
Weeks, not months.
Weeks. Or the bigger headache for property managers, a systemic and very costly water intrusion problem that suddenly affects multiple homes at once.
So an inspection is basically your due diligence shield. It gives you the clarity to make a decision that's not just safe, but legally and financially sound.
Absolutely. The stakes are they're dramatically different here.
Let's unpack this. So let's start right there. What is the fundamental difference? Why does a deck on a strata building need this level of scrutiny that's, so far beyond a normal residential deck?
Well, it really boils down to physics and the law. So first, the physics part, it's all about load and traffic.
Okay.
A residential deck is, designed for a few people, maybe a barbic. Commercial and strata decks, though, are often exit routes, common gathering spaces. They're designed for much heavier loads and constant foot traffic.
So just constant wear and tear.
Constant stress. It wears down waterproofing, loosens fasteners, and it just accelerates rot exponentially.
And if the structure is already under that much more stress, I have to imagine the BC building code requirements are way stricter.
Oh, absolutely. They are, especially around the safety standards. We're talking about really strict code compliance for things like guardrail height, load capacity, and critically, the integrity of the waterproofing membrane.
Because the public is using these spaces constantly.
Exactly. You're held to a much higher standard, and that leads directly to the legal difference, which is liability.
Right, this is the big one. If my deck at home fails, it's my problem. But on a strata property,
it's a whole different ballgame. The liability for property managers and strata councils in BC is, it's enormous. When the law talks about an avoidable hazard, this is what it means. It's a failure that could have been prevented by, reasonable diligence. And in this context, that means regular professional inspections. A big deck failure can expose the entire strata corporation to lawsuits. The financial risk is it's classified as very high.
Very high versus moderate for a residential home. That's a huge gap.
It is.
So if a property manager skips that specialized inspection, they're not just taking a chance. They're actively risking covering up hidden damage, like rot under a vinyl surface.
Precisely. And that omission just multiplies their liability.
Because they've now sanctioned a repair that isn't safe.
Exactly. You could put down a beautiful, expensive new vinyl surface, but the whole thing fails 3 months later because you missed the ledger board.
The part that attaches the deck to the actual building.
The most critical connection. If that's rotted out, the surface doesn't matter. The inspection ensures that foundation is safe, waterproof, and code compliant before a single dollar is spent on aesthetics.
Okay, let's shift gears a little and focus on that financial and governance framework. For strata corporations, this is a legal obligation, isn't it? Maintaining safe common property.
It is. And beyond just the immediate safety, these inspections become a critical part of sound financial planning. Our sources all recommend that these decks be inspected annually.
Annually, not every few years.
Annually. Especially with Vancouver's rainfall, the decay rate is just too fast.
I want to dig into that frequency, though. Why does it matter so much in a shared building?
It's the shared liability structure. If one deck starts leaking, that damage is almost never isolated. It's going to affect the unit below, maybe units next door, sometimes even the main building envelope.
I see.
This makes the waterproofing membrane, especially on vinyl decks over a living space, absolutely critical. If that membrane fails, you've got leaks in multiple units, you've got mold, you've got structural damage, and a massive unexpected bill for everyone.
So one small leak becomes a systemic building problem, which usually means a special assessment that nobody wants.
That's the key link right there. The inspection findings are crucial because they feed directly into two mandatory documents in BC: depreciation reports and reserve funding.
Okay, so explain how that works. I know depreciation reports forecast future repair costs.
Right. And the inspection provides the hard data for that report. So instead of just guessing that a vinyl membrane will last, say, 15 years, the inspection tells you its actual condition.
It gives you the remaining useful life.
Exactly. If the inspector says these beams have 3 years left, that specific cost has to go into the report. And that ensures the Strata Corporation is budgeting correctly for its reserve fund, the big savings account for future repairs.
So if you skip the inspection, your depreciation report is just a guess.
It's based on optimistic assumptions. It leads to underfunding and then, inevitably, a huge and painful special assessment that blindsides all the owners.
So the annual inspection isn't just about safety now. It's really the only ethical way to fund the future. It's a budgeting tool.
First and foremost.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If the stakes are that high, we need to know what the process looks like. When a professional shows up for this annual check, what are they actually looking for? It can't just be a quick walk around.
Oh, absolutely not. It's a rigorous, multi-stage evaluation. They're hunting for problems you just can't see with the naked eye. We can break it down into about 6 core areas.
Let's do it.
Number 1 is structural integrity. This means they're actively looking for common failure points, things like rotten beams and joists, and as we mentioned, that really dangerous ledger board separation.
Right, where the whole thing is pulling away from the wall.
That's the one. If that connection is compromised by rot or corrosion, the whole structure is at risk. They also look for sagging sections and corroded fasteners, which is a huge issue in our coastal climate.
Corrosion is like the silent killer for those connectors, isn't it? And since we're talking about hidden damage, that must bring us to moisture.
That's area number 2, moisture and rot detection. And this is purely a subsurface game. The visual check is just the beginning.
So what are they using?
Professionals use specialized tools like moisture meters. These can detect high moisture levels deep inside the wood framing, often behind all the protective barriers. They also do physical probing in high-risk spots, like where the wall meets the deck, to feel for soft spots that indicate decay.
So they're literally scanning inside the walls for a water breach.
Precisely. Because finding water trapped there often points to a flashing failure, which is, a direct precursor to mold and major structural problems inside the building itself.
Okay, so they've checked the structure, they've checked for hidden water. What's next?
Step 3 is the surface condition. This is a detailed look at the wear layer. If it's a vinyl deck, which is common, they're looking for bubbling, which means trapped moisture or delamination at the seams.
Okay.
And they confirm the deck has a positive slope, meaning it directs water away from the building and toward the drains. If it's flat or worse, slopes inward, water just sits there, and that dramatically accelerates the failure of the membrane.
Which makes total sense. If the water's not draining, everything else is under constant attack.
Which leads right into step 4. Waterproofing and drainage systems. Here they check that the slope is actually working, that water is getting to the scuppers and drains. They inspect all the flashing around doors and walls, those are the weak points, and check the integrity of the vinyl seams and the gutter systems. A clogged gutter can dump water right back onto that ledger board.
Starting that catastrophic cycle all over again.
Exactly.
Okay, so structure and water are obviously the big ones. But in a multifamily building, I feel like the guardrails are the most immediate safety issue you can see.
Absolutely. And that's our 5th area, railing and guardrail safety. This is a massive compliance check.
What are they looking for?
They're making sure the height and the spacing meet the current BC building code. It's a huge liability mitigator. They physically test the anchorage to make sure the railings are secure, that they can withstand force. And if there's glass, they're checking the integrity of those panels. A loose guardrail is an immediate high-priority fix.
And what's the last piece?
The 6th and final step covers stairs and landings, an often neglected area. They check for consistent rise and run on the steps, stable handrails, and proper slip resistance on the treads. It's a comprehensive look at the entire system.
So that 6-stage inspection generates a huge amount of data. How does a strata council then take all of that, the photos, the moisture readings, and turn it into an actual plan?
The output is the professional inspection report, and its single most valuable part is the priority-based repair list.
Okay.
The benefit of hiring a specialist here is you get their dual expertise. They know the commercial-grade materials like high-performance vinyl, but they also understand strata governance. They know how to create the documentation the council needs for approval.
So what are the absolute must-haves in that final report? What makes it worth the cost?
Well, it has to be a visual, data-driven guide. It must have high-resolution photos of every single deficiency. That's non-negotiable for communicating with owners.
Right.
It has to include the specific moisture readings that prove there's a subsurface risk. But most critically, that priority list has to categorize the defects. It has to separate the urgent life safety structural needs from, say, less critical work like surface cleaning.
So it's not just a laundry list of problems, it's a roadmap. It tells you what to fix first.
Exactly. It ensures the council addresses the root cause first. Like we said, you can't just put a new vinyl membrane over rotten joists. The report guides that repair sequence. If the ledger board is failing, that's an urgent structural job that has to happen before any cosmetic work.
And the sources are pretty clear on this, right? Starting repairs without this inspection is just asking for trouble.
It's dangerous. You will inevitably cover up hidden damage, making the repair temporary, non-compliant, and ultimately unsafe.
And when you lay it all out, the difference in stakes is just so clear. For commercial and strata properties, the liability risk is high to very high, and the inspection frequency is annual. For a residential deck, it's moderate risk and maybe an inspection every 2 or 3 years.
That annual check is the critical governance tool. It manages that high liability and protects the safety of everyone who relies on that structure every single day.
So what does this all mean? At the end of the day, these mandatory annual inspections are really about 3 pillars of strata governance. There's occupant safety, strict regulatory compliance with the BC Building Code, and of course, critical financial planning for those depreciation reports and reserve funds.
And the process has to be specialized. It's because of the high traffic, the complex structures, and the critical nature of the waterproofing, especially that vinyl over living spaces.
Right. And that systematic 6-stage approach ensures that the biggest underlying problems, the urgent structural fixes or a failing membrane, are found, quantified with data, and prioritized correctly in the budget.
Given the climate and the use, that annual check just reflects the rapid rate of decay you see in these kinds of structures.
And it leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. The entire framework of property management and strata governance in BC is built on avoiding foreseeable hazards. So given that these annual inspections are clearly the standard, and a failure affects an entire community's safety and finances, how can any property owner or manager really calculate the true long-term cost of not knowing what hidden damage is lurking just beneath the surface of that deck? That's the calculation that defines responsible governance.